So we've talked about Apple a few times before. So before we start, there's a question I want to ask you.
Okay.
Do you or have you ever owned an Apple product?
I had an iPhone 4 that my brother gave me, and it broke when I dropped it. Taking things that have already been invented and slapping their logo on it is pretty much the modus operandi of Apple at this point. As such, I think it's important to remind people that Apple as a company once released a computer so bad it failed literally 100% of the time. The Apple III.
Karl, how is it possible that somebody would release a computer that failed 100% of the time?
Well, I can answer your question with 2 words, Brad, and those 2 words are Steve Jobs. To explain, according to technicians tasked with designing and building the Apple III, Steve Jobs insisted that the computer had no vents or fans of any kind, so the computer would be entirely silent.
What a genius.
Yeah, what a visionary genius that guy was, isn't it? I want a computer without fans or vents. And if people are wondering, why is that such a big deal? Just feel the bottom of a laptop after it's been sat on your knee for like, an hour or so. Just feel the back of your computer and feel all the heat coming out the back of it. That's fucking why.
Or, after you've been playing your phone for a few hours, put it on the back of your hand.
Yeah.
Those things get hot.
And those are like computers that have had like an entire 2 decades of technology extra put into them, and they still overheat. So as you can imagine, the Apple III was massively prone to overheating because it had literally no way of venting any of the heat caused by its internal components.
Isn't Jobs famous for prioritising the aesthetic of a product over the functionality of it?
Yeah, usually to the detriment of the final product's quality. My favourite example of that being why iPhone screens break so easily. It's because the company who makes the glass, Corning, Gorilla Glass, which is basically the screen of every phone in existence, every time they make a breakthrough, they noted that when Steve Jobs was alive, he'd respond by making the screens thinner. So they could realistically make a phone these days where the screen would never fucking crack. But the problem is that phone would be a few millimetres thicker than it needed to be, and Steve Jobs wasn't about that life. So every time they made a breakthrough in glass technology, smartphone companies, and Apple in particular, would respond by making the phone thinner. It's we can have it exactly the same strength as before. And yeah, but it's still prone to scratches and breaks. But if you make it a millimetre or so thicker, it'll be able to survive anything. No, fuck that. Millimetre thinner, you say? And that's what they do. As shitty as that idea of form over function was, it did sometimes result in quite ingenious design solutions being made. My favourite example of that being the first iPod, which Steve Jobs, when he saw a prototype, got enraged at because it was too big and bulky. And he told engineers, flatly, make it smaller. Apple engineers said, we can't make the iPod smaller. And Steve Jobs said, really? Hand it here. And they handed him the prototype iPod, and he walked over to a fish tank in his office and dropped the iPod in and looked and said, there's some air bubbles coming out there. If there's air, there's space. Get rid of it. I don't think anyone out there is going to argue that's not a fairly ingenious way of highlighting to engineers there is a way to make this device smaller. And obviously that inspired them to go out and remove that empty space. The same way that they were inspired to come up with an alternative solution to cooling down computers when Steve Jobs insisted on there being no fans or vents.
So what was the solution that they found?
Well, Apple engineers eventually settled on creating a heat sink at the bottom of the computer composed of aluminium, or aluminium to you Americans out there. It's to draw heat away from the internal components without the use of a fan or a vent, which was a fairly ingenious solution, but it did make the computer quite heavy and did result in that base bit getting incredibly hot, since its entire point was to draw heat away and disperse it into your desk. Which is not probably a good thing. Have you ever put down a pizza box on a freshly varnished table or like that, and you pick it up and there's a big stain underneath? Can you imagine putting the Apple III on a desk, a wooden desk, and picking it up after the fact and going, you've warped all the wood, this thing's useless now.
There's just a burn mark in a big square.
And I imagine after that you just get a note from Apple saying, no, you're just using the computer wrong. All those people this iPhone doesn't get any signal, and they released an official statement saying you're holding your phone wrong. Because when you held it, left-handed people, when they held it, would put the hand over the antenna or some shit, so left-handed people couldn't make calls on one of the iPhones. And their official response was, you're holding it wrong.
Surely that was the perfect opportunity to release a left-handed phone.
If they did, I'd guarantee you it'd sell. It's ridiculous. But the idea of, you're holding this wrong. How up your own arse as a company do you have to be? No, we're going to make it run entirely silent by just putting on this giant aluminium base. And that's going to be balls hot constantly after like even a tiny amount of use. As you can imagine, given that this computer had, as noted, a 100% failure rate, this solution didn't really work, and the heat caused by that heat sink would result in the internal components of the Apple III popping out of place. Luckily, Apple had an amazing solution to this problem for users who experienced it.
What was this amazing solution?
Pick up the entire computer and drop it on the floor.
I'm guessing that's a joke from your part saying it's so shit, just get rid of it.
No, an actual, official Apple spokesperson told users of the Apple III, if you experience any issues with the Apple III, a solution to these problems might be to, and I quote, lift the entire computer 6 inches off the desk and drop it into place. The idea there being that dropping the computer resulting in those internal components that popped out of place, popping back into place thanks to the force exerted.
That's worse than when you bang something to try and make it work better.
What, percussive maintenance? That's a real thing.
There's a term for it.
Well, that's the term engineers use to describe banging something till it works, to make it sound more like, technical and official. Percussive maintenance, folks.
My favourite one of those is when you, with the old games cartridges, when you used to, if they weren't working properly, you would take them out and blow them and then put them back.
Even though it says on the back, do not blow inside, because the saliva from your breath might corrode the internal components. Now, the number one with a bullet for me is the Xbox 360, which had a similar overheating problem. And do you know what the solution to that was? Turn it on and wrap it in a towel. Not even kidding. I did this and it worked. If you've got the red ring of death, one of the things you can do is wrap the entire console in a towel for 20 minutes while it was turned on, which would cause things inside to overheat and expand, allowing components to slide back into place. And it worked. It kept my Xbox 360 alive for another 2 years.
Well, I've had my PS3 for over 10 years, and that's recently stopped working because I think some of the gel between the chip or something has gone.
Yeah.
There is a way to fix it, but apparently you can fix that by putting it in front of a hairdryer for about 15 minutes.
To warm it up and
get it gets it working. It might work again for 15 minutes or like 5 years.
The one that got me is my PlayStation 1 would work better when I turned it upside down. Because sometimes the laser that read the disc would sometimes like fall further into the machine. So putting it upside down, let the laser be a little bit closer to the disc, make it read it better. Just the idea. It works better upside down. The thing about all those things though is they're jury-rigged solutions that people came up with, not official advice from the company who made them. Microsoft didn't release an official statement saying, wrap your Xbox 360 in a towel. They said, send it back to us and we'll repair it for you. Apple said, no, fuck it, drop your computer. That cost the equivalent of, I should add, $12,500 today on the floor. My favourite thing about this official solution, though, is, Brad, imagine today if Apple released, an official solution to a problem that was, drop your brand new Apple product onto a hard surface from 6 inches in the air. Do you think anyone would be comfortable doing that, given their, reputation for instantly shattering the moment they touch something?
I'm pretty sure an iPhone can break from an inch off the surface.
I've seen people crack them, pulling them out of their pocket too hard. It's ridiculous.
I'm pretty sure I know someone who broke it sitting down. It wasn't even underneath it was in his pocket.
Yeah, it can happen because sometimes the rivets in your jeans can press against the screen and crack it. So for people watching this who have an Apple product in their pocket, remember a couple of years ago an official solution to fixing one of the the flagship products of the brand was drop it on the floor. Think about that the next time you drop it slightly on your soft bed and you shit yourself and the screen's cracked. Holy shit. Just the balls to say that. It reminds me of when I was in IT once. We had an IT teacher who wasn't that great. And someone did that thing on your computer screen where you can flip it upside down.
Yeah.
And the teacher went, and it's one of those big, giant, fat PC screens. And he just went, fuck this, turned the screen upside down and left it as it was. Because he couldn't be arsed fixing it. It's that's the solution, isn't it?
When I was in school, I learned all those commands and used to go around and do it on people.
Turn them on at right angles.
It's like the one that makes the text massive.
High contrast mode, zoom right in.
There's the negative
sticky
one.
Keys.
Oh, fucking sticky keys,
Sticky
man.
keys, the
Pissed
fucking
me off so
worst.
much. I'm assuming, seeing as he had it at 100% failure rate, there must have been other things wrong with it as well.
Yeah, in addition to overheating every single time it was turned on, which risked components popping out of place, other components were soldered in too aggressively into the machine to stop this from happening, which resulted in them short-circuiting all the time.
Soldered in too aggressively.
That's the term that's used. They were soldered too aggressively to the machine, so they couldn't be so they wouldn't fall out of place, which resulted in them short-circuiting when they overheated. then you compare this to like the Nokia 3210.
Oh, you mean that
Just compare it to like, Mjolnir of phones. It's like, have you heard the shit that Nokia does to their phones to test them? No. Like, they put them in a drawer filled with like thousands of sharp, pointy pieces of plastic, and that drawer just gets shook about for like 3.5 hours to simulate a lifetime of a phone being put in and out of your pocket with like keys and coins and shit like that. And then they put them in like a machine that bakes them, and one that freezes them, then one that simulates like the jungles of like, the Orient. Because they say, if you buy a Nokia phone in like a city, who's to say you're not going to go to a desert and then immediately go to a jungle and then go to the Arctic? Our phones need to work in every single location imaginable. And you compare that to one of Apple's phones, you're holding it wrong. It can't make a call unless you hold it right.
Well, we've talked before about was it the DS?
The DS, yeah. Where they said, if you don't know anything like the Nintendo DS, the original clamshell one of the guys who helped make Satoru Iwata said to him, you've got to be able to drop it 10 times from 1.5 metres in the sky without it cracking or breaking. And they did it. And then another one that cracks me up is it's called the Gorilla Test, which is what all Nokia phones go through after all the other tests, which is basically where they give it to an engineer and say, try and pull it apart with your bare hands. And give them 10 minutes to do that. Like, basically just smash it on a desk.
Yeah.
Like, you'd hand it to a gorilla and see what they do with it. And they take that and they look for structural weaknesses.
I'd love to see that gorilla test with an iPhone, like the most recent iPhone.
The gorilla holds it and the gorilla holds it wrong.
Actually, I'm pretty sure the more recent iPhones are getting slightly better at not breaking. I think it's around about the 6 or 7 mark where they were absolutely horrific.
They still bend.
They do, but I was watching like one of those tests when I was doing research for an earlier video.
Yeah.
They were dropping them, and obviously the more recent one took less damage. So I think they learned from their mistakes. Nokia have always had that reputation for having those indestructible products.
What cracks me up though is that Nokia knows this, because you remember when they released that 3210, the new version of it, the first thing journalists did is throw it out of a window. Like a lot of journalists, they got it and went threw it straight out of a window, and they were looking at prototype versions. And apparently Nokia knew that. And they said when we were making it, we put durability above all else, because like the legendary durability of the original 3210 is one of the reasons it was so popular. So we put that first and foremost when making this new version. And they gave it to journalists to throw it downstairs. They told them to do it because they knew that's the first thing people would do.
Nobody was buying that phone because they wanted to use it for... Everybody was buying it because it's indestructible.
Yeah, and that's what... Nokia knew that, and they knew about all the memes and shit. So apparently their phones go through some insane tests. You can probably get like a video of the shit they go through. Like they get belt sanders that have got like the material for denim on it to simulate being like put in an empty pocket 1,000 times in a lifetime and shit. Like, it's crazy.
One of the funniest things I think I've ever seen in regards to this is that one of those YouTube channels who does the tests between which phones are like more indestructible. Yeah. He was testing like the iPhone versus one of the Samsungs, but the hammer he used was made with a Nokia.
That's fucking strong. I do like the guy as well who did the unboxing of Sony's waterproof phone underwater to prove that it's waterproof out of the box. So I quite like those. But just the fact that, yeah, we know our products are supposed to be durable, so they test them like this. And they're like, and then you compare it to like Apple, and you see all those people like walking around with a cracked screen. It's like, really, man?
I saw it on the train recently. I can't believe
it's
people
25%. 25% of all smartphone owners have got a cracked screen. So I've had this piece of shit for 2 fucking years, and this has never cracked. I drop it all the time. But there's one crack on the screen, and do you know what it was ironically caused by?
What?
Do you know that iPhone I told my brother gave me?
Yeah.
I've been using that as like an iPod. I just replaced the screen and battery and used it to listen to music. I dropped that on it when it was on my bed.
So your iPhone not only broke, but it also broke something else.
By proxy.
I will never underestimate having a case on your phone, though.
I will never put a case on my phone. Like, what's the fucking point?
But no, because my phone cracked within a couple of days. I replaced the screen and put a case on it. It's never cracked since. I've dropped it multiple times. It's always been fine.
Or you could just buy a product that's known for its durability.
True, but then I wanted to play Pokemon Go. Leave me alone.
As you'd expect, given everything we've talked about today, the Apple III sold worse than an Xbox in Japan, and 20% of all the units sold had to be replaced when they failed outright because they sucked harder than a blowjob in the vacuum of space. So the next time you see Apple announce a new product, just remember that one time in history they released a computer so bad it failed literally 100% of the time. Because there's a quote from Steve Wozniak you can find where someone asked him like, oh, all these problems, how many problems suffered with these in like 100%? The computer had a 100% failure rate. Like, they worked, but it would fail 100% of the time if left on for a long enough period of time.
Well, that's like the red ring of death of the Xbox. It was going to happen, it was just a matter of when.
Yeah, it was like 90% of all Xboxes had it. But Microsoft agreed to replace any Xbox afflicted with it.
Yeah, which is fine. Like, they realised they made a mistake because they rushed it too fast, didn't they?
They were to beat Sony, yeah. They wrote off $1 billion immediately because they knew they were going to to replace them. There were internal documents released where they said, like, we knew the Xbox was going to fail, and we wrote that off as a loss, and the number we'd have to replace to get onto the market first to get that established market share, because that's what you want.
It worked.
It's the same thing with PlayStation.
They won that level of the console.
They sold the PS3 at a loss, despite it costing like £700 at first, because they knew it's the only way to get the established install base. We touched briefly on the Nokia 3210 in this video, and I love the Nokia 3210 because obviously it's a device known for its durability. So in that vein, Brad, is there any product you've owned over the years in which you've been surprised at how long it lasted?
I've always been surprised at how long my consoles lasted.
Yeah, older ones last fucking ages, don't they?
Even though I mentioned that my PS3 broke, it lasted like 10 or so years of use.
And how long's your PS2 lasted?
Well, I mean, longer than that.
It still works, yeah. My PS2 still sat at home.
The only thing with my PS2 is it no longer plays PS1 games.
Well, it's okay, because you can borrow my PS1 player. Doesn't that crack me up about that? My PS2 is just sat there like with a copy of Juiced in it, waiting for me to go pink slip TK, and my PS1's still there with like Final Fantasy 8 Disc 3 in it, so I can go beat Ultimisia. It's like, I'm coming. One day I'll do it. I just haven't got time yet. Like, even my SNES is sat there with my half-completed, like, file save of Super Metroid on it when I'm trying to go for 100%. Just there. I'll save them. I'll save them eventually.
Glorious return.
It's waiting, yeah, they're all there, and it's all still on the thing. It's like, even my old Game Boy still works, man. I booted it up the other day when I was at home. My old copy of Pokemon Ruby, that's at my mum's house. I booted it up and it's still got all my Pokemon on there. So, oh wow, cool. There's my Shedinja. Nice one.
See, my PSP stopped working and now I'm not really sure what to do with it.
Mine still works.
Because I don't like...
I sound like such a rich asshole, don't I? No, I just don't throw anything away. And I deliberately went out when my dad was clearing out all my shit. I made sure, like, Dad, do not throw away the SNES, I'll have it. My brother's like, oh, it's PS2's useless. No, give me that shit. I want that PS2.
Yeah. I bought that PSP second hand with, I think, about 6 games for £32.
What a deal.
Yeah. I didn't play it much, though.
You put PS1 games on a PSP. I've got Medieval on that.
Didn't know that.
It's the Daniel Fortescue, The Legend Never Dies. And he's getting a remastered version of his game. Can't wait. So yeah, consoles last fucking ages up until around like the Xbox 360 era, where I think there's just too many moving parts inside for to guarantee that something won't go wrong eventually.
Yeah.
Whereas like PS2s, they're just a workhorse. They'll go on forever. It's like, oh, my GameCube's still knocking about. It's like, oh man, I've still got my Def Jam Fight for New York save on there. My 100% save, where it's just me with like wearing like a sideways baseball cap with like tribal tattoos down one arm. So I thought that was cool back in the day.
Somewhere around here, I've got this old handheld console that still works.
Oh my god, you got one of those pieces of shit. Don't tell me it's a Mr. Game & Watch. Even I'm not that nostalgic.
Oh, here it is. There you go. Have a look at that.
Oh my god. Oh my god. It's one of those things that looks like a calculator. It's one of those things you get like the Seaside for £3 with like a fishing game on it, innit?
I think it's got like 50 odd games on it.
They all do, don't they? Oh my god. Like, it feels so light and shit. Because that's the thing I love about old technology.
Yeah.
Like, old technology has a weight to it that modern technology doesn't tend to have. It's like when I pick up my PS3 controllers and it's like, oh, it just feels light. But then you compare it to like the PS2 DualShock analog, it's like, there's some weight to this bastard. Or the Xbox 360 controller, not the wired one where you put the batteries in, and you put rechargeable batteries in, it's like, there's some weight on this bastard. If I clock someone on this and they beat me at FIFA, they're going down.
See, I realised when we mentioned in a previous video, like last week I think it was, about me having a Master System.
Yeah.
It was the Master System 2 I had, and I forgot that the controllers are little squares.
Oh man.
They're so clunky.
I try and, like my SNES, I boot it up every now and again to like play some Super Metroid or a bit of like Mario Kart. And my big gorilla hands can't fit around those fucking controllers. I had to buy like a third-party controller that actually fit, because I can't get my hands, it's like that.
Well, the original Xbox controller was gigantic.
Oh, the Duke. The Duke. The one we got. You can't forget, though, the white and black buttons. Because they didn't want to put on R1, L1. They put on the white and black button in Halo. That's how you turn your torch on. It's bullshit, man.
Oh, I didn't realise this has 256 games.
I bet 254 of them all suck.
But they're all the same.
It's got the Tetris rip-off on it and then a card game that your mum played.
I'm trying to see what year it was made in, because this isn't a new thing. This is ancient.
Oh, they go back years, don't they?
This is probably like late 90s, early noughties.